Also, is Meghan Markle secretly fearing a split from Prince Harry?
You keep saying Meghan Markle, you know I'm Sussex now. You have kids and you go, no, I share my name with my children.
At 45, most people don't choose chaos. They choose distance. They choose rest. They choose the quiet dignity of letting stories pass without correction. They protect what remains of their peace. That's why, in this imagined telling, when Jessica Mulroney finally spoke, it landed not like gossip, not like a salacious reveal, but like gravity. Because people who wait this long aren't chasing relevance, they're unloading weight. For years, Jessica had watched Meghan Markle's public story solidify. She had seen interviews loop endlessly on screens, watched talking points harden into accepted truth, seen sympathy turn into identity. And all the while, another version of events stayed sealed behind private doors, unshared, not because it was harmless, but because it was heavy.
I was actually ready to tell you guys a story about the wedding.
Yeah,
do you want to hear it?
Yes, we sure do.
Okay. So I have identical twins.
She had been there, not adjacent, not nearby, inside the room. She had heard the comments that never reached microphones. She had seen the expressions that disappeared the moment cameras appeared, and she had kept quiet, believing that loyalty meant absorbing discomfort without complaint, until silence stopped feeling like protection and started feeling like complicity. According to Jessica in this fictional account, the shift didn't arrive with a single explosive moment. It arrived with repetition, with patterns, with small dismissals that accumulated until they formed something undeniable. She recalled the first time she realized this wasn't just stress talking. It was casual, comfortable, said without malice, which somehow made it worse. "The Queen's just a little old lady in a hat," Meghan allegedly said once, waving it off as if describing a neighbor. "Why should I bow to her?"
Jessica, no, there is no shunned girl squad takedown coming from her at least.
There was no anger in the voice, Jessica said. No fear, no insecurity, just dismissal. And that made it chilling, because this wasn't about misunderstanding tradition, it was about rejecting meaning. The Queen wasn't mocked as a person, she was minimized as a symbol. Nearly a century of duty reduced to inconvenience. According to Jessica, this wasn't an isolated remark. It was part of a broader attitude. The curtsy wasn't respect, it was performance. The rules weren't sacred, they were obstacles. The role wasn't an honor, it was a platform. And once that lens formed, it colored everything. Prince William, in this retelling, became a recurring punchline. His posture, his seriousness, his restraint, allegedly mimicked privately, exaggerated, turned into a caricature meant for laughter, not reverence. Kate came next. Publicly praised, privately reduced. Jessica remembered comments about Kate's smile, too rehearsed, too perfect, too eager. Her warmth framed not as kindness, but calculation. Her composure interpreted not as discipline, but dullness. Then came Charles, his speeches, his gestures, his earnestness, material for impressions delivered confidently, as if no one in the room would dare object. But the moment that stayed with Jessica didn't involve power or hierarchy. It involved Princess Anne. Decades of service, no scandals, no theatrics, relentless work. And yet, according to Jessica, Meghan dismissed her as irrelevant, invisible, a non-factor.
Shade her ex-BFF, Meghan Markle? And more importantly, do you actually know why they're ex-BFFs?
That wasn't humor. That was philosophy. In Meghan's private hierarchy, relevance mattered more than duty. Visibility mattered more than endurance. If you didn't command attention, you didn't command respect. And that, Jessica realized, was the real fracture line. This wasn't about personalities clashing. It was about values colliding. The monarchy is built on longevity, on the idea that no individual outshines the institution. Meghan, in this telling, was built on impact, on immediacy, on presence. Those two systems were never going to coexist quietly, and the moment everything crystallized came at a dinner party. Not a palace function, not a public event, but a private table among trusted faces. No phones, no consequences, or so it seemed. Wine flowed. Stories were shared. Meghan was relaxed, confident, in control. Someone mentioned the Queen, and Meghan allegedly didn't pause. If it weren't for me, she said, they'd still be stuck in the past. I'm the only interesting thing that's happened to this family in decades. The laughter died instantly. Jessica remembered the silence that followed. Forks paused midair, eyes averted, tension thick enough to taste. Harry looked down instead of up. That was the moment mockery turned into belief. Not a joke, not venting, but declaration. Once entitlement surfaces, loyalty becomes optional. Hours later, Meghan smiled for cameras again, gracious, polished, respectful, but Jessica said she never saw that smile the same way again. Because once you hear someone claim dominance in private, you can't pretend the public version is the full truth. According to this fictional account, Harry didn't always laugh along. Sometimes he smiled, sometimes he went quiet. And silence in those moments wasn't neutrality, it was permission. Jessica described realizing the shift when a request came, not for friendship, not for support, but for cover. For narrative protection. Silence was demanded, loyalty required sacrifice without reciprocity, and when Jessica refused, the friendship didn't fade. It vanished, messages stopped, invitations disappeared, access was revoked, years of closeness erased overnight. That was the moment silence stopped feeling noble, because loyalty that demands self-destruction isn't loyalty, it's control. And that realization didn't make Jessica furious, it made her speak. Not to punish, not to perform, but to finally step out from under a weight she had never agreed to carry forever. The moment Jessica chose to speak, she understood something most people never do until it's too late. Once truth is released, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to everyone who hears it, reshapes it, questions it, and carries it forward in.
Meghan Markle's ex-BFF, Jessica Mulroney, posted a cryptic quote saying that her detachment game is strong. As loving as I am, my detachment game is strong too.
Ways you can't control. But she spoke anyway, not in anger, not with theatrics, not to burn anyone down. She spoke because silence had begun to cost her more than honesty ever could. The tears didn't come when the interviews aired. They didn't come when headlines appeared, or when her name began trending again for the first time in years. They came later, alone, when the phone stopped ringing and the weight finally lifted. The hardest part wasn't being heard. It was admitting how long she had stayed quiet. Jessica realized too late that loyalty had slowly been redefined around her. It wasn't mutual protection anymore. It was expectation, assumed silence, unquestioned alignment, the kind of loyalty that flows only one way. And that was when the relationship changed in her mind, even if it hadn't yet changed on the surface. Jessica began replaying moments she had dismissed at the time, comments she laughed off, eye rolls she ignored, jokes that landed just a little too sharp to be harmless. At first, she told herself it was stress, culture shock, pressure. Everyone vents in private, but venting doesn't require superiority. What unsettled her most in this retelling wasn't the mockery itself, it was the certainty behind it, the conviction that the monarchy was lucky to have Meghan, not the other way around. That respect was something Meghan granted, not owed. That worldview explained everything that followed, the gradual distancing, the increasing control over narrative, the quiet rewriting of history where loyalty was reframed as obligation and disagreement as betrayal. The last conversation they ever had wasn't dramatic. No raised voices, no confrontation, just a shift. Meghan spoke less like a friend and more like a manager, calculating, directive, expectant. The warmth was gone, replaced by something transactional. And that was when Jessica understood the friendship no longer existed as a relationship. It existed as an asset. When assets stop performing, they're discarded. After the silence fell, Jessica waited. Weeks passed, months. She expected reconciliation, clarification, maybe anger. None came. She had been erased. That more than any insult broke something open inside her because the closeness she had believed was mutual had always been conditional, useful, strategic. Once usefulness ended, so did affection. When Jessica finally spoke publicly, she chose her words carefully. She didn't accuse. She didn't speculate. She described what she witnessed, what she heard, and how it made her feel. And still, the reaction was explosive. Some accused her of betrayal. Others called it jealousy. Some said she was bitter. Others said she was brave. The response mirrored what Meghan herself often received. Jessica expected that. What she didn't expect was Meghan's reaction. According to this imagined ending, Meghan didn't respond publicly at first. No statements, no interviews, just silence. Behind that silence, though, were tears. Not staged, not performative. Jessica wasn't an outsider. She wasn't a critic. She wasn't the press. She was inside the room. And insiders don't shatter narratives with speculation. They do it with familiarity. That's what hurt the most. Not the claims themselves, but the recognition that someone who once laughed with her, defended her, stood beside her, no longer believed the version of events the world had accepted. Harry noticed immediately the tension, the irritability, the way Meghan fixated on coverage she pretended not to read, the way she asked the same questions repeatedly as if repetition could undo exposure. Why would she say this now? Why couldn't she stay quiet? After everything, Harry didn't answer because somewhere inside, a thought he didn't want to name began to form. People who lie exaggerate. People who invent overreach. But people who wait usually do so because the truth isn't convenient. That idea frightened him more than any accusation ever could. Jessica didn't continue the media circuit. She didn't capitalize on momentum. She said what she needed to say, and then she stopped. That restraint spoke louder than any interview. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't escalation. It was release. In the end, this fictional story doesn't conclude with vindication, apology, or reconciliation. No confessions, no dramatic confrontations. It ends the way most real fractures do, with distance. Meghan moved forward, but something had shifted. Certainty cracked. Armor felt heavier. Control became harder to maintain. Jessica moved forward too, lighter, quieter, finally unburdened by a loyalty she had mistaken for friendship. The public absorbed it, argued over it, then slowly moved on. But beneath the noise, something fundamental had changed. Once the private version of someone enters public conversation, even briefly, it can never be fully erased. It lingers. It reshapes interpretation. It adds shadow where certainty once stood. And perhaps that is the real ending. Not tears, not triumph, not downfall, but the irreversible moment when silence breaks, and everyone involved must live with what follows.